The NBA season is just about a month away, but on today's show, I have 10 predictions or hot takes, depending on how you look at them, for the upcoming season. So drop yours down in the comments. I'm excited to see what you guys have to say. Starting off here with, I would definitely classify as a hot take, Ja Morant. I'm going to have him finishing top 3 in the MVP ballots in 2024. Now, I think recency bias definitely shapes our opinions on players and teams. Again, what have you done for me lately? That's the world that we live in. But Ja Morant, I think, is going to come back this year, and I think he's going to prove a lot of people wrong and put the world on notice yet again. This is the guy that I think is still a top 5 point guard. I think he has an argument to be a top 3 at the end of the year. If he can return to MVP form, which he was on the trajectory to do so 2 years ago before, of course, everything happened off the court, this is a guy that I think could be in conversations with who's better, Jalen Brunson or Ja Morant or Shai Gilgeous or / Steph Curry. I think Ja Morant could be in that top 3 category is all I'm saying. This is a guy that's coming back to a team that is practically the same than what he left it, and they're only going to be healthier going into this upcoming season. So if they can stay healthy, I think Ja Morant comes back and dominates, and I think it's going to be a great season for Memphis fans. But on the screen here, you see his numbers from 2 years ago when he was fully healthy for the season. Again, great numbers for a point guard, and I think they're only going to get better. His three-point shooting is only going to get better, as we saw in the small sample size from the 8-game sample size from last season. But this is a lineup that you have Marcus Smart coming back. He's going to be an all-NBA level defender. Desmond Bane, all-NBA level shooter, right, if that was a category. Jaren Jackson, of course, former defensive player of the year. Zach Edey, roaming the 5, great help defender. Off the bench, you have guys like Brandon Clark, right? You have guys like Luke Kennard in the mix. There's some other guys I'm sure are missing, but this is a team that I think could be an interesting buyout team for, some veterans down the line of the season. But Ja Morant, I think, is just, I think he's primed to come back and have an explosive MVP level season. All I'm saying is don't be shocked if Memphis puts the world back on notice. At number 2, I think there is going to be a new 6-man in Phoenix, or at least there should be. I've been praising this since the trade happened just about over a year ago. But as the season went on and with Bradley Beal's injuries, I continue to state he needs to come off the bench to maximize the big 3 that this team put together. Now, again, $150 million wrapped in a big 3. You don't ideally want one of those guys off the bench, but here's what I'm going to say. Being a bench player doesn't mean you're playing 15 minutes a night. That doesn't mean you're Trevor Ariza. I know he's not in the league anymore, right? But you guys get what I'm saying. It doesn't mean that you're off the bench and you're only going to be playing minimal minutes. He can play starter minutes, just start the game off the bench. And I've been saying this for a long time now, and I'm going to continue to say it because I think most people would view it as a hot take. You now have a true facilitator, which is something that this core has missed for years now since CP3 left. Tyus Jones has led the NBA in assist-to-turnover ratio for years, and I don't see why he doesn't continue to do it. So, especially now when you have a guy like Tyus Jones, he can get Devin Booker, Kevin Durant, heck, even Royce O'Neal in their spots, get them going, get them hot, right, offensively. And then when one of these guys gets tired around the 6 or 7 minute mark in the first quarter, then you throw in Bradley Beal, right? Or if one of these guys gets in foul trouble, then you insert Bradley Beal into the lineup. And this is a guy that can still average 20 points a night. Again, he's going to have fresh legs. There's going to be times where he runs the offense by himself. There's going to be times when he is the main guy. I mean, this is still a guy that can give you 30 a night in a poor situation like Washington. But Bradley Beal's such a talented scorer, and again, I'm a Gators fan. Go Gators. But I think he needs to come off the bench for the first couple of minutes of the game. Let Booker, let Kevin Durant get hot, and then you insert him into the mix, and then they kind of figure it out throughout the remainder of the game, right? But I think that's the best way to do it. You now have a balanced starting lineup. Then you have a great scorer and great shooter, of course, in Grayson Allen coming off of the bench. I think that's the best way to go for Phoenix. Let me know what you think in the comments, but I think I'm going to continue to praise what I've been saying for over a year now. He needs to come off the bench to maximize this $150 million big 3. At number 3, the Nuggets have a new second best player. Another hot take, I would say. But Michael Porter, I think, is going to take another leap this year, and I think he's going to overtake Jamal Murray. We're all going to see him as the second best player in Denver. Now, again, Jamal Murray just signed a huge extension. So as Denver fans, you don't really want to hear that. You want to hear Jamal Murray's going to return to being a top 5, top 10 level point guard, and then Michael Porter takes a jump. I honestly, I don't know if Jamal Murray's going to take that next jump. I think you can get consistent production from what he's given you the last couple of years, but I think Michael Porter takes a step this year. This is crazy, but I think he might be in the most improved player category with how they run that award now. But I think he could jump up to 20 points a game, 10 rebounds a game. I think, of course, his 3-point percentage is still going to be there. He's still going to get 7 to 8 attempts a game. So if he can improve that to, let's say, 41, 42%, these are minor jumps on paper, but they're going to be huge jumps for this team throughout the remainder of the season. And I think if he can average 20 and 10, giving him 42% from three, I would say he's going to have an argument to be better than Jamal Murray at the season's end. So, again, this is a team that needs that secondary guy next to Jokic. They need a guy where when Jokic doesn't, when he takes a step off the court, the team doesn't go down 30. They need a guy that could be their go-to guy, and that was Jamal Murray. But last year, a lot of injuries. The year before, injuries at times. And there's moments in the playoffs where Jamal Murray doesn't always show up. I think Michael Porter can be that guy with his offensive prowess to take a step up this year and to show us why he was once considered to be the best high school player in the world. Michael Porter Jr., again, never been the biggest supporter behind him, but I hope he can take a big step this year for Denver, and I think it's going to happen. My next one, at number 4, we're going to have someone scores 81 plus points this season, and a singular player. It doesn't have to be 4 to 5 players, right? One player this year will break Kobe Bryant's record. Luka Doncic, of course, these are some recent guys that have scored over 70 or more in recent years. Of course, he had Book, who's done it twice in his career, but recently he's dropped 70 in a game. Joel last year against Victor Wembanyama, which is absolutely insane. Spida Dame did it on the same night, or I think it was within a week. And then, of course, Luka last year, 73 points. Absolutely insane. And he had the volume to get 81. He didn't shoot particularly well that night, and he still ended up with 73 points. So these are 5 guys that have recently done it. I think these are the 5 guys that have great chances to do it again. Maybe not Damian Lillard at this point. But again, maybe Luka. I think he's got to be the front runner, if anybody, to break 81 points this year. But I want to see it happen, right? I want to be alive for it. So again, I don't think anybody's touching 100, but 81 definitely feasible, and one of those guys could potentially break it. At number 5, I think the Philadelphia 76ers make the Eastern Conference Finals. Again, I'm not a Sixers fan, but I believe this team has it all. If they could stay healthy, they have it all to make a deep run. Now, I will say this. Temper your expectations if you are a Sixers fan. This is a team that has just recently formed a new Big Three. What have we learned from new formed Big Threes over the last decade of the NBA? They need time, right? You can go as far back as the Heatles days. They need time. They need a year to maximize exactly what they have. Put their guys in the best positions on the court, right? Or at least before the games, right? As far as rotation-wise, they need time to figure out what exactly is the best way to go about things, and how many shots each person gets, right? Who is the second best player? Who's the third best player on a nightly basis? Those are things that these new form Big Threes on their teams they have to figure out. That was a long-winded sentence. Hopefully you were able to understand me there. But Tyrese Maxey, he's only going to get better here, of course. But can he continue to improve his playmaking? I think he can. Kelly Oubre, solid 3-and-D wing, same as Caleb Martin. But Paul George, you bring him in on a big contract, and he, on paper, is everything that the Sixers team needs. They need a guy that, if Tyrese Maxey doesn't have it going, Paul George is going to be the guy that can step up. And who knows, any 3 of these guys can go out there and drop 40 and be the go-to guy on a nightly basis. And I think that's what makes the 76ers scary. Now, aside from the starting lineup that, again, they need time to figure out, and now I think at the bare minimum, I talked about it 2 weeks ago, they need to win a playoff series. The bare minimum, win a playoff series this year. Get that monkey off of Joel Embiid's back, right? So in the maybe 2 years from now, they can go out there and make a deep run. But bare minimum, win a playoff series. But I think they have the potential with this starting lineup and this bench, again, one of the best benches in the league. They can make it to the Eastern Conference Finals, because who can stop Joel Embiid, right? Last year, he almost took out the Knicks on one leg. If he can stay healthy, again, that's a big if, because Paul George and Embiid don't have the greatest track history in that department. But if they can, they have everything on paper to make a deep run. They can guard everybody. They can outscore anybody. And at the end of the day, if it's an ugly game, you have an MVP, a guy that should be a 2-time MVP on your roster that you could just give the ball to and get out the way in Joel Embiid. But this bench, a veteran unit, but I think, again, very solid top to bottom. Lowry, Jackson, of course, Eric Gordon, great shooting. He can potentially slide in the starting lineup. Yabusele, forever known for dunking on LeBron, and Andre Drummond. I mean, who's going to rebound better than Drummond, even though he is way past his prime? I don't like to buy into hype often, right? But I think especially even though that the Sixers got Cat's never been able to guard Embiid. I'm going to take the Sixers to make an Eastern Conference Finals run. They're going to make it. They're not going to win it. They will lose to Boston because who else can stop Boston besides themselves? At number 6, we're going to go with the Detroit Pistons make the play-in. Cade Cunningham, Jaden Ivey, Asar Thompson, Jalen Duren. That was the core of this team last year. And what did they do? 18 wins. Far from any kind of play-in contention, let alone the playoffs, right? So what makes me think that this same exact core that just brought in a new head coach in JB Bickerstaff and an aging Tobias Harris as a homecoming trip to the Detroit Pistons, why do I all of a sudden believe in this team? Well, honestly, I just think that they just need to be healthy, and I think now that they have more continuity than ever with this young core, right? They worked in Asar Thompson last year. We found out Jalen Duren is an automatic double-double machine on a nightly basis. Jaden Ivey got hurt, but when he was playing, there were stretches where he was giving them 20 points a night. Cade Cunningham was averaging career highs across the board last year. He just needed some consistent health and production around him outside of Jalen Duren. But this is a team that, again, they have on paper, they have two-way ability, right? You have your superstar level guy in Cade Cunningham. You have your rim protection in Asar Thompson and Jalen Duren. Again, your wing defenders, Jaden Ivey, you want to see him improve a little bit, but he can hold his own there on the defensive side of the ball. Now, Tobias Harris will be a hole on this team. But again, I think you have some pieces on the bench that you can work in, maybe hide Tobias Harris defensively. But I think they can make the play-in. I think they can double their wins because to me, they have the perfect coach to do it. I'm a Cavalier fan. JB Bickerstaff has been solid, but we've had questions with his rotational issues. Of course, his timeout, inconsistent timeout college throughout the season. So some of those things I think Bickerstaff needs to work on, but this team didn't need a veteran head coach that wants to win right now in Monty Williams. They needed a young guy that can help develop their talent. And if it wasn't going to be Kenny Atkinson for this team, JB Bickerstaff is one of the, if it's not 1A, he's the 1B option. I think he was the perfect hire. I think he's going to get the absolute most out of this young core. And I think they can double their wins and make a play-in push. I think they can go 36 wins, sneak into the play-in. Who knows? Maybe they steal a game or so if they get hot towards the end of the season. But, I mean, again, that's a bet in its own, just for them to double their wins. But I think they can make it into the play-in. I don't know. Maybe I'm delusional because, again, they've been 15th like the last 3 years in the Eastern Conference. Here's another one. The Golden State Warriors missed the playoffs. Look, you have Steph Curry, you have AirPods. Andrew Wiggins is being inconsistent. I know last year he had a lot of off-the-court issues that he had to deal with. Jonathan Kuminga last season called out his head coach and then went on to average 25 a game for a stretch of time. Draymond Green, of course, we know what he can do, but he's only getting older, and having him at the 5 is not necessarily the best way to go about things. But of course, solid bench. I would say you lost Klay Thompson, a pillar in this organization, a guy that you can go bet your mortgage and then go take out a loan on another mortgage, and then you could bet that, right, on the fact that Klay Thompson will get his jersey retired as a Golden State Warrior when his career is all set and done. But this is a team that you lost a guy like Klay, but you might have the best overall roster around Steph post Kevin Durant era. Again, solid starting lineup that I just read out. A lot of defense, right? And I think that's perfect next to a guy like Steph Curry. A lot of defense, lots of continuity. This is a team that likes to move the ball and move, nonstop. It's just a dynamic offense. And this is an offense and a group that I think can do that. And then you also have your secondary scores in Andrew Wiggins and Jonathan Kuminga. If Kuminga can average 20 a night or even 18 a night, I think that's going to give the Warriors a great chance to be a sneaky playoff team. Because at the end of the day, we saw Steph Curry. We saw how he was overseas for Team USA. He can still get the job done, right? You just need some help around him. Now on the bench, of course, D'Anthony Melton, Buddy Hield they brought in, which I think was a huge addition. GP2, Slow-Mo Anderson they brought in as well. Nice veteran mouthpiece. Trace Jackson Davis, they also have Kevon Looney. So surprisingly, a deep roster here in Golden State. You just need to put it all together and you need to be healthy. That's the only two caveats here. But I think with all of the talent in the Western Conference, if I'm not predicting injuries, I think there are some teams here on your screen that I like their odds more than the Golden State Warriors to make the playoffs this year. Or okay, I like OKC, Denver, Minnesota, Memphis, Dallas, five absolute locks. I think those are going to be five teams that are the top six seeds at the season's end. The Pelicans are definitely a bit of a team in the middle there, but I like the Pelicans more than probably the average fan. They brought in DeJounte Murray. They still have Brandon Ingram that, if they can figure it out, is a great offensive piece. I like New Orleans this year more than Golden State, so I'll say that. But Sacramento, the Lakers, I think are teams that I'm certain that they can make it over the Golden State Warriors. As far as, again, we're basing this mostly off of regular season success and putting themselves in the best situation for the play-in. I think the Lakers and I think the Kings can do it a little bit more than the Golden State Warriors. Now, the teams I would give a slight edge to, I'm talking about teams that might be the 7 or the 8 seed at the playoffs end. The Suns, of course, you have all that talent there, but can they figure it out with Mike Budenholzer? The Rockets, they were right on the Warriors' tail last season. But for the Rockets, if you can continue to develop with Ime Udoka running the show, and if you could figure out how to maximize your best two players in Houston, hey, this is a Golden State team that might not even make the play-in, let alone the playoffs. Now, injuries will happen. If they don't happen to Golden State will no doubt be a play-in team, but I don't know if they can get out of the play-in, right? And that's pretty much my argument here. So I will say right now the Golden State Warriors missed the playoffs in 2024. And boy, will that spark some LeBron and Steph Curry talks. I can promise you they will. For the next two, and these are that might not be necessarily hot takes, right? But I think these are players that the media and the majority of fans want to see these players traded, but I just don't think it's going to happen due to their contracts. Starting here in Chicago, I don't think Zach LaVine gets moved. He still has $140 million on his contract remaining. I do think he's still a top 50 player in the NBA today, but I just don't think that with his contract, and of course with his off the court issues last year, being a bit of a drama queen, I don't think that's going to entice teams to trade what he's actually worth. So I think Chicago, especially with the fact that Zach LaVine has come out and said he's embracing the rebuild, he knows this year is going to be a bit of a challenge. I think Chicago's going to hold on to him at least for another year and then maybe move him next offseason. But again, the NBA is weird. Karl Anthony Towns just got traded, and I thought he was going to finish his career in Minnesota, but that is not the case. Zach LaVine, though, different connection to his franchise than a guy like Karl Anthony Towns, but unless he comes out and demands a trade and gets traded for less than what he's worth, I don't think Zach LaVine gets traded this season, probably next off season. Same thing can be said here in New Orleans. Again, a guy like Brandon Ingram that didn't have a great end to last year. Now, coming off an injury, he was expected to all of a sudden carry the load again once Zion went down. But the way that he finished that last month of the year, the play-in and then the playoff series, it was hard to watch for the talent that we know Brandon Ingram is. He was getting put in Alcatraz by Lou Dort in that first round series. And, he was a guy that they were looking to carry the load with all the defensive and secondary pieces that New Orleans has. But, there's speculation, should they trade Brandon Ingram? Because we have Zion, looks like he's taken that next step. And we also have guys like Herb Jones, great two-way player, all NBA level defender. Trey Murphy, so many great things you could say about him. You bring in DeJounte, all of a sudden with CJ McCollum as well, you don't really need a guy like Brandon Ingram. And what do you need? You need a center, because you can't really be starting Yves Messi or Zion on a nightly basis. You need a center, right? Daniel Tice, I can promise you, is not the guy. So maybe Brandon Ingram is that piece. Maybe they trade him for a center throughout the season. I don't know. But I will say, for the fact that he is seeking $50 million a year, and the fact that, he still has $40 million on his contract this year. So you're going to have to give up $40 million worth on your roster for a guy that might not even resign throughout he might not even resign next offseason. Is what I'm getting at here. Now, I could see a situation where maybe Detroit comes calling and says, hey, we have a young center, a guy that Isaiah Stewart and some draft capital that we can give you for a guy like Brandon Ingram. But is that enough for Brandon Ingram from the New Orleans side of things? Or would Brandon Ingram even want to go to Detroit? So maybe he tells Detroit, hey, you can trade for me, but I'm not going to resign. So Detroit, there's no reason to trade for Brandon Ingram. I'm going around in circles here, but hopefully you can understand why I'm saying that even though he's on a 1 year deal and he wants a lot of money, it's incredibly hard to trade for him if you know he's not going to resign with you. That's what I'm getting at. But there's definitely trade possibilities out there, but the situation might not be what Brandon Ingram wants. It's got to be a two-way ship here for a guy like Brandon Ingram. And number 9, De'Aaron Fox, I think, has his best shooting season ever in his career. And I will say that I think if there was any player in this core now in Sacramento that's going to have to sacrifice, I think the most sacrificial is going to have to be De'Aaron Fox. You have Keegan Murray, the elite three-point shooter that he is. He's the only real knockdown shooter in this offense. I think De'Aaron Fox needs to be the second. I think he needs to let DeMar DeRozan and let Domantas Sabonis cook, right? Let them run the offense. It's Sabonis mainly, right? Let the offense run through him, especially with all these dynamic wings that they have. And I think in order to get the absolute most out of this core, look, we know DeMar DeRozan's not going to shoot anymore. We know Sabonis is a good mid-range shooter, but three-point, you can't really rely on him. I think De'Aaron Fox is going to have to be that guy that really takes a step back offensively and just become more effective as an offensive player, if that makes any sense. He's still giving you, look, 26 and a half, 5.5 a night. Good efficiency as it is on 8 3-point attempts a game, but he's at 37%. Again, above league average. Great form. But I want to see him into that 40 to 42% range, as crazy as that sounds. But imagine if he can improve to 40% a game from the three-point line on this volume, that's only going to give DeMar DeRozan and Sabonis the absolute most space, because at that point you can't really sag off of Fox and you can't sag off of Keegan Murray. Who else are you going to sag off of, right? So Sabonis, DeMar DeRozan gives them the entire mid-range to go to work, and then you have Fox and Keegan Murray on the outside spreading the floor. Keon Ellis, of course, we saw last year, can shoot the three ball, so he can just sit in the corner. I just don't see many flaws in this team if De'Aaron Fox can become a consistent elite shooter from the outside. That's all I'm getting at here. But that was number 9. And number 10, the last one that we're going to cover today, Jeremy Grant, unlike Zach LaVine and Brandon Ingram, he will be traded. A guy that is 30 years old. Of course, his contract is winding down last year on his $30 million contract year, but he's giving you solid production, 21 points a night. We know he gives you good efficiency, great defense, right? He's a versatile wing, but that brings the question, where does he get traded to? There's a lot of teams that I could see happening. And I will say this, I promise I'm not a fan of this organization. I can promise I'm not someone that will say that this team is going to get this player every single year because they're a big name and they're going to be potentially available. But I think that this is a year, due to what has gone on with a new head coach in this city, with the fact that they have an aging superstar at almost 40 years old. You need to maximize the roster around him when you still can. I hate to do it, but I think he gets traded to the Los Angeles Lakers. You put him there, let's say it's a 3-team deal. Let's say Orlando gets involved and D'Angelo Russell gets shipped to Orlando, but at the end of the day, I want Portland to at least get 1 or 2 first-round picks from the Lakers in a deal like this. Now, given that his contract's almost up, maybe it's only 1 first-round pick, but getting a first-round pick for an aging superstar, or not superstar, but all-star level player, I think is solid for the Trailblazers aspect. But for the Lakers, that entire Mind the Game podcast, you could really see the true point guard in LeBron James. And we know that when this team won the most that they absolutely did, LeBron was practically the point guard in the 2020 bubble run. You put him back at point guard here with JJ Redick. They know exactly what worked. Why not? Let's do it again. LeBron's getting older, right? You want to have less offensive load on him. So you get a guy that can do both in Jeremy Grant. You also have Austin Reeves, Rui Hachimura. Great, again, players in their roles. Anthony Davis, I think, is going to take a step up this year, finally trying to at least touch the torch that LeBron is trying to pass to him. But Jeremy Grant, again, great two-way player. He can be the guy to guard the Kevin Durant's of the world, the Giannis's of the world, right? Those elite wings like Jason Tatum, Jaylen Browns. He can be that guy for you, because we saw last year Rui and Jared Vanderbilt, Vanderbilt, they're not really those guys, right? So I think getting a guy like Jeremy Grant, again, he's physical, he brings toughness, and he can guard those elite wings around the league. and he can also knock down the three-point shot. So he does everything next to a guy like LeBron James, and I hate to buy into it saying that this player's potentially available. He's going to the Lakers. I hate to say that, but I think it makes a lot of sense because Rob Pelinka, he needs to maximize LeBron James. But that's going to do it here. Episode 213. I have 10 predictions / hot takes for next NBA season. Drop some of yours down in the comments. Of course, now, again, we're approaching 19,000 subscribers here on the channel. So if you made it to this point, you enjoyed this at least a little bit. So again, drop a like, subscribe to the channel, turn those notifications on, and tell a friend to tell a friend about the channel. We are consistently growing, and that is because of you amazing people listening to this point in the podcast. But again, a lot of fantasy football content here on the channel as well as our NFL podcast every single week. So if you're a sports fan, we got something for you here on this channel. But again, a lot of great content on the way. Hopefully you enjoyed, and I'll see you guys tomorrow for some waiver or for some fantasy football.